Hey, one more quick thing. Have we got any confirmations for next week's cyber one yet? Well, if you do and look through everything, and again, sometimes people aren't emailing you, but this is why when they start to use the CEO, so they email me and it goes to you too. But just even beforehand, so I can kind of update people online, because I'm holding out one possibility that we might push it 1 week, but I don't want to, say anything about that unless, we're not getting any. So, okay. So just, yeah, you can text whatever, anytime. All right. Thanks. Bye. Hello, Brian, Rick, and Sean. How are you doing?
Mute. Start video. Do I have time to eat this muffin before we start?
You do, Brian. You do. Eat away. We got 8 minutes exactly. Hello, Valerie. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Drew. How are you?
Great, great. You're looking well.
Yeah.
Come on, Drew. What about the rest of us?
Well, I'm sorry, but Brian and Rick can't compete with Valerie here. So, how are you doing, Rick? You're on mute.
Brian, I want you to pull your camera towards you a little bit so that we don't have that look of you.
Eating.
Okay.
I said he could eat. I said he.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I want to watch you eat. I'm jealous because I haven't eaten yet myself, and so I want to take in every morsel with you.
Well, I will eat. I will eat during this show. This is like one of the few chances I can turn off my camera, and so I will turn off my camera once we get going here. So okay. Sean is like hiding, but he's in the meeting. Rick, hello. Can you speak and be heard?
Sure. And also, I'm adjusting the light too. So tell me if you want. This is
brighter.
Brighter. That's too bright. Is that too bright?
Oh,
no, that actually looks really good.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got my little light up here. Yeah.
So
Brian,
just
use a little light when you're finished with your morsels.
I'm in a hotel room in Chicago. Is it dark?
You're dark. Yes.
I'm going to let you unmute, Sean. That's kind of crazy.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, how are you?
You should be able to mute. You should be able to unmute, Sean.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep. There you go.
There we go.
All right, great. All right, listen, it's 11:54. We got 6 minutes here. Let me just take a minute of those 6 to give you a little update here. So normally we always start at noon, and we will start at noon and go live, and then we'll invite all the people who have registered, and we'll get a scat of people that come on board at that time. Normally, we also live stream to other platforms simultaneously, and for a glitch that's completely on our end, we didn't get that set up, and you can't do it an hour out. What we will do instead is we will re-upload it. So this video will be available on that site, later today. But I apologize, it won't be live streamed to the regular audience. However, it will be to the Zoom. We're going to record. It's actually recording now, but I'm going to stop it and restart it right at 12 so that we get the complete, this stuff will not be appearing on the recording. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know.
That's it. I'm out, Drew. Just kidding.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, me too.
Forget it. Yeah.
Forget it.
I mean, part of the thing is like, this has been a luxury for me, Sean. I'm so, glad that this will be the second one he's moderated. I haven't had to do any of this, maybe third, maybe you did. Anyway, so I'm going to just welcome people, and then I'm going to turn off my camera and be on the background. Now, let me right now, while I'm thinking about it, make Sean a co-host, which I've just done.
Okay.
I'm also going to make Valerie, you had a presentation, correct?
Yeah. In fact,
I'm
I was
gonna make-
wondering if I could just share my screen real quick, just to,
Well, I got to make you co-host first. So I
Okay.
just made
Okay.
you
Yeah,
co-host.
so my question was, how can these guys do this?
And then who had the other one? Rick? Was it Rick
Rick,
or was
yeah.
it
Yeah,
Brian?
I've got one. And Sean,
Rick?
I mean, it's a lot to cover, so I
Well, yeah, the general rule of thumb is you have to, a minute a slide. So you guys have a lot. Again, I've said you guys are, responsible. So I'm going to let you do all the time. I won't take more than 3 minutes at the top, and then I'll come back at the last 2 minutes. Okay. But otherwise, I'm going to leave it to Sean to run the show. And I've made every one of you the co-host. And obviously you guys are trying. So go for it. I'm going to shut up and let you, Sean, talk about what you want to talk about logistically.
Yeah, no, we'll just have Valerie go and then Rick go, and then Brian will give his thing. And then I'm jotting down ideas as I look through both of your presentations and things that we talked about yesterday, and I'll just.
and Sean, I have a question for you. Are you going, because I have the agenda pulled up and I thought I could pull that up. Are you planning to pull that up and show people? Because I was gonna just at the end, just let them know where they could find the agenda.
Yeah, why don't you just do that? That's fine if you already have it. Yeah, that seems easy enough. Yeah, no, so pretty easy. And then, I'll just off the cuff, just ask a bunch of questions after you guys are done, because there's a lot of stuff we can talk about. There's a lot of good stuff in the presentations that we can kind of build other questions up on. It just makes it more interesting to do it that way.
So just for structural purposes, are we going to go present, Q&A?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Make it simple. Make it simple.
Agreed.
Since I don't have slides, I assume I'm just eye candy for the presentation.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I probably have
Sean,
a big blueberry on my teeth.
You better check that first.
Yeah.
Sean, as the co-host, why don't you try, can you profile one person? So try to profile Valerie, just put her as the one person who, I don't know, spotlight for everyone. Can you do that?
How do you do that? I don't know.
It should be in the view menu.
Oh, okay.
And hey, Brian, you can go on down to video and click on that arrow. I had a professional, we did a professional webinar, that arrow, and click video settings, and you can turn up your light that way
Is it?
as well.
Where do I do that?
That's
The little arrow next to stop video.
that little carrot up arrow.
Yeah, hit that
Okay.
and hit video
Oh, okay.
settings.
Should
And then
I
you
do-
can also give yourself the Liz Taylor treatment too, where it just takes out all the wrinkles.
Yes,
Okay.
it's the touch up my appearance link. And then there's adjust for low light. There's an adjust for low light setting in video settings.
Oh, okay.
So I'm cranked all the way
Say
over
that
to the
I
right.
have my touch up my appearance link checked or not, but
Is that better?
Right.
Pretty good to me. Yeah.
I just did it.
Natural,
Do I look 10 years younger?
20.
absolutely.
At
Look
least,
at
at
that.
least.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think the
Oh,
blueberry.
you know what? I need to grab some batteries. Hang on.
Are
Hey,
we, Sean, you're gonna do a Q&A on the back end of this?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, a lot of it will just be questions about stuff that we talked about yesterday. Nothing, and whatever else comes about, based on what you guys present as well. So there's always different issues, but we talked about managed services yesterday, managed Wi-Fi. Valerie brought up security issues, and I don't know, using IoT for integration and Wi-Fi as the backbone. I mean, there's just so many things we could talk about. But
It's kind of like a Springsteen concert. Then
Yeah.
never play the same playlist twice.
no, of course not. That's boring.
Exactly.
So, but yeah. All right.
All right. So Sean,
Sure.
it's 1 minute out. I'm gonna
Right.
like I said, I'm gonna stop the video. I'll start it again.
Okay.
I'll be highlighting myself. And then after I conclude, I'm just going to turn my video off. I'll still be here. I'll still listen to
Got it.
anything if there's any emergencies, problems. And then I will introduce you, Sean, but then you
All right.
introduce everyone else. And
Sounds
then
good.
just save 2 minutes at the end. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds good. We'll do. We'll do.
All right. So here we go. Just give me a minute.
Hey, Sean, I may just do, I could take a little break after that first sort of what are the trends.
Yeah. Okay.
And then if we want to come back and do the survey stuff, I can do that.
Yeah,
All right.
that's fine. Yeah. However.
All right,
however-
let's-
Okay.
Yeah, let's cut it off for a second. I'm going to start just now. So give me a moment to stop it, and then I'm going to start it again. Good afternoon and welcome to Broadband Breakfast Live Online. I'm Drew Clark, editor and publisher of Broadband Breakfast. Very happy to welcome you to this special preview of the Broadband Communities Summit that's taking place September 27th through September 30th. Broadband Breakfast is a media company and we produce news and content, and we hope you enjoy and come back frequently to broadbandbreakfast.com to see what we publish. Most of our content is free, but we have recently added a membership service for those who'd like to get discounts on special events and preview special content. We also do a free webcast every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern time. That's what this is today, our Broadband Breakfast Live Online. And we are responsible for putting on a program at the Broadband Community Summit called Digital Infrastructure Investment. That event will take place on Monday, September 27th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time, or 12 noon to 5 p.m. Central time. It will be both in person. If you are a registrant for the Broadband Community Summit, you will be able to attend at no additional charge. Digital Infrastructure Investment. However, if you are not attending for whatever reason, Broadband Community Summit, you can still attend our event virtually, and registration is available on the Digital Infrastructure Investment page on Broadband Breakfast. And I'll send a link out to this shortly, momentarily. I have the luxury today of not being your moderator. I'm going to turn it over just now to the moderator, who will introduce the three guests who are participating in today's event. I just want to set the stage that this is the third of three parts that we've had on kind of preview, if you will, preview of the event. And the first event we did on July 21st was a general overview of the Broadband Community Summit. We had Barbara DeGarmo, CEO of Broadband Communities, and other individuals associated with Broadband Communities on that session, and talked in overview terms about the value and the purpose and the reason you should be attending Broadband Communities. The second one was 2 weeks ago on August 14th, and that was a focus on financing panels at the event. And we had Steve Ross and Hilda Legg and Brian Snyder of Lit Communities, along with myself, and we talked about the financing sessions, including digital infrastructure investment on Monday at 12 noon Central Time, but also other financing related sessions at the summit. And the third session today will be on the issue of multi-family dwellings or multi-tenant housing. I've never figured out which is the right way to say that, and hopefully I'll learn from listening in to the session that is about to take place. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to your moderator, who is Sean Buckley. Yep. Sean is the editor-in-chief of Broadband Communities, very knowledgeable on this field and many other fields in broadband. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'll be in the background this time. I'll see you at 2 minutes to the hour at the conclusion of your great session here. So Sean, go ahead and take it away.
Great, thanks, Drew, and welcome to everybody in the audience as well. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks again for everybody. We have a really great panel of speakers today. Joining me today are, of course, Valerie Sargent. She's the multifamily news correspondent with Broadband Communities. Rick Hani, Vice President of Industry Technology Initiatives at the National Multifamily Housing Council, and finally Brian Rader, who's representing the service provider industry. He's the president of Upstream Networks, which is now part of Single Digits. And we're going to talk about a lot of different interesting trends that are emerging today. Of course, everything from managed services to IoT integration, security, and managed Wi-Fi, et cetera. But I'd like to hand over the reins to Valerie, who's going to walk you through some trends that she's seeing. Valerie?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sean. I'm happy to be here with all of you today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I've prepared some information for you guys. So let me pull that up for you really quickly. All right, you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So my background, just to let you guys know who I am and why I'm here. I am actually a national speaker, trainer, and executive consultant within the industry. And as Sean said, I'm the multifamily news correspondent for Broadband Communities magazine as well. So I've been very involved with the planning process for this event coming up. But I'm also really entrenched within things in the multifamily industry. And Drew, to answer your question, yes, it's multifamily as far as if you're speaking to anyone on the residential side of things, any property management companies. The MDU terminology seems to happen more within the operator side of things. And so for any operators out there who are approaching multifamily owners, property owners, you really want to talk about it as a multifamily industry because they don't speak in terms of MDU, multi-dwelling unit. And so there's your first vocabulary lesson of the day is make sure that you're using the right terminology with your clients if you're going to be speaking to them. So let me make sure that my remote is working because I plugged it in after we got started. Okay, there we go. So I wanted to talk to you about some trends that I'm seeing and things that have developed over the past year since the start of the pandemic. And obviously, we've had a lot of properties that were forced prematurely to their original plans into smart tech adoption. And the need for this is that with the COVID variant circulating, they wanted to ensure the safety of their staff members and ensure the safety of prospects and residents. So a lot of companies found themselves turning to virtual touring mechanisms, whether this was through any type of access control in the building. I actually went with someone who just rented a community, had a community that has their own app for the company, and the prospect will actually access it through the app. They check in when they're at the property. There's a little box before you can get on the elevator. There are appointment times. Everything happens through this virtual touring process. And so that is an increased need for video monitoring as well. And the intelligent home building aspects, when they're walking into the apartments, you know, they may have the Nest employed where they have the temperature that's being monitored or changed basically, you know, on an automated basis or a necessary basis. Everything's controlled intelligently in the home. So there were a lot of companies that had this happen when they weren't really planning to do that as quickly. And so we've seen definitely an uptick in this through the past year. Now, as far as new construction goes, a lot of the properties, what they're doing is they're designing for these needs going forward because they found that some people were wanting to go out of apartments to actually seek homes or places where they could have more workspace to work from home or expanded space to be outside. So they're expanding space for exterior balconies, and they're also adding things like in-home work nooks. There are private work or study spaces that are being added to the floors of high-rise so that people can maybe escape their home environment that is a little bit crowded and go to a quieter location that might be just for them. Outdoor workstations, those are available, larger floor plans. Some are even adding isolation rooms for shared homes so that you can go in and not have a dog or a baby interrupt your Zoom. Or if you're me, if there may be a noise coming from my landscapers outside, that may happen today, just an FYI. So there are also multiple smaller social spaces for small group areas because we're gathering in smaller groups now. So these are some of the things that we're looking at from a design and construction perspective. However, with that, we are also looking at the need for Wi-Fi available everywhere and the need for it to be dependable for the residents to be able to work from home, have meetings from home, stream from home, all of the things that they need to access from their home or from within their communities. So we really need that always on connectivity. They've been doing a lot of studies recently, and this is not even necessarily within the multifamily industry, but just within our nation at large and our world at large. And there are a lot of people that plan to continue to work from home. And with the rise of the Delta variant right now, everybody's going back to school, but then you worry about if there is exposure, do we have to go to any type of online schooling again? Then there still could be schooling from home, or some parents, just with the fear of it all, they're actually looking at keeping their kids home and homeschooling. So there is that need for the always on connectivity. And in your apartment communities, you have to ensure that that is dependable broadband services. So how is that backed? Is it backed by fiber? Is it a strong signal, a weak signal? Is the customer service good with the company that you use? These are all things to consider. There are some challenges to adoption, though, with regard to broadband and broadband-based Internet of Things systems, smart home systems at communities. There's regular maintenance that's required, and you have to make sure that you stay on top of the software updates and security updates. I don't know if you guys heard, we'll talk about cybersecurity, but even just T-Mobile was hacked today. So if a company is not staying on top of things, then there is risk involved. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with adopting these types of smart home features. And some owners remain hesitant because of that. They want to just even avoid it all because of the headache of maintaining it. So those are some challenges that we see to adoption in some of the smart home type technology, or the technology that we see being employed out there today. Additional challenges include affordability. For a lot of property management companies, there's not a big budget to upgrade the systems in a way that allows for this type of technology to work. And when you have a smaller property, for instance, a lot of our operators have a minimum number of units that they will go into simply because for them to be able to get a return on their investment. And in many cases, an owner is going in on that investment with them, and they just can't make the dollars work on either side. So it becomes difficult for those communities to be able to install, really good, robust broadband systems. Rural properties are another area where it's more difficult for them to receive dependable broadband services. And then we have affordable communities and senior communities. Now, the senior communities, I know Brian's actually going to moderate a panel at the summit about senior communities. With new construction, they're planning for everything, and you can do all of the bells and whistles. In fact, new construction, anything allows for you to plan for all of these things properly. But for affordable and senior housing, they don't really have the budgets for it if they are existing or older communities. So bridging that digital divide, we really want to look at what are we dealing with. More than 75% of the rental housing stock in the United States is made up of buildings with fewer than 20 units. And so they're really very small. And the nation's rental housing stock is aging rapidly. So most, half of all of the units were built before 1980. And then we have, just such a large number that were built before 1950 as well. So when you have that older building infrastructure, you have an older technology structure, and that can create some challenges with your broadband signal. And when you think about upgrading, what's it going to cost to do that? And so that's why we have such a digital divide today, because it's really easy for the newer communities to be able to pull everything in that they need. But for the older communities, it's more challenging. So there was recently a broadband infrastructure portion of the infrastructure plan that was passed. And the hope is that this will allow the rehabilitation of these types of rental properties to happen so that this technology can be modernized, and that communication backbone that's so important will help prevent this type of displacement that's happening to residents and to communities across the US. So I know there are a lot of opportunities possibly for operators to take advantage of that. I know I'm leading a section of a panel during the town hall where we'll be addressing how independents work. And so some independent broadband providers may be able to get some funding to go into these communities that beforehand they were not able to, and some of the larger providers may as well. So cybersecurity, as I was saying, is another thing we need to really pay attention to. And Julianne Goodfellow of NMHC is going to be running a part of the town hall as well that's based on cybersecurity. She and I just did an article for the magazine together, and companies really need to be thinking about what steps they need to take to protect their technology assets. So just today, T-Mobile had, and I'm sorry if you're a T-Mobile person who you have a T-Mobile phone, but social security numbers were accessed via this latest hack with T-Mobile, and important information that we don't want out there. And we're very responsible for our residents' information. And so making sure that you have a plan in place to help mitigate those risks and ensure that you have done everything on a checklist of things to keep yourself safe and protect your property, your company, and your systems, because there are some things that you can do for that. So just wanted to go over a few benefits of the summit with you. I've been going to this event for, gosh, I don't even know, well over a decade, and it's a wonderful event. The nice thing is there is a multifamily track, so it's dedicated, and this year you'll be learning about new innovations that are coming to the multifamily industry. You'll get legal and FCC updates, as well as find out about trends. There are owner-specific sessions, so it's just owners, attorneys, and no providers can come in, and you can have some really good discussions that are just owner specific. And we'll be covering ways to future-proof your buildings and talk about technology and different partners that are available and what they can provide. And it's also great networking. And just from a competitive standpoint too, something that is starting to happen is there are going to be ratings for communities with regard to broadband service. So if you are not stepping up your connectivity, you may be losing out on residents, because it will start to be communicated. So I just want to stop sharing here really quickly. And as a last final thing, I wanted to show you just on the website where you can find all of the information that you need. So on the bbcmag.com website under events, you will find the Broadband Community Summit, and there's an agenda at a glance page that's right here. And then you'll see that this multifamily track here is kind of like a light blue, and that's where you're going to find all of the multifamily specific content, which you'll see it goes down the left-hand column, and you can find out everything that is coming up. I know Sean's going to detail a little bit more information for you, but I just wanted to quickly let you know that's where you go for more information. So that's it for me for now, and
Awesome.
I'm happy to take some questions later.
Great. Okay, well, I'm gonna hand it off to Rick. I think I've been jotting down a bunch of ideas and questions for you guys for later, but yeah, I'm gonna hand this off to Rick, and he's gonna share with us some research he's been doing at MHC. Rick, go ahead. You gotta unmute yourself, actually.
I didn't want to be that guy. It's like I was. All right, from the beginning. All right, how's that?
There you go. You're good.
Okay,
I'm
excellent.
gonna mute myself. So.
Okay, excellent. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and I think looking at what are the trends, along with my NMHC colleagues here, we plan the OPTECH conference, which is broader than BBC and doesn't go as deep. Telecom and connectivity are part of the agenda. But we definitely cover operations more so than BBC. But BBC is a fantastic summit, and I'm looking forward to being there in person in a couple of weeks, actually. So yes.
Hey, Rick, can you just hit your from beginning? I think you're on the slide part itself.
Okay. I had hit slideshow from beginning. Now?
There you go.
Okay, good. So yeah, I definitely agree with Valerie that multifamily housing, that's how we refer to it. We're the National Multifamily Housing Council. We were at one point the National Multi-Housing Council, so whatever that meant. Changed our name to multifamily, and that is definitely a term that we are more familiar with than MDU in the industry. And then also following up on her comment about the sort of tech acceleration and adoption, absolutely true in the industry. And not just in our industry. I just tweeted out an article from this morning that economists are saying that we are potentially going to have the largest productivity gains since the 1990s because of this tech adoption and AI, because it was forced. And in addition to that, you layer on that we also have a worker shortage, that people are going to seek technology solutions, and they are going to figure out how to make them work. So really kind of an interesting time coming up to see how technology continues to roll out moving forward. So thinking about trends, we have basically 6 topics that are guiding our construction of our OpTech agenda, which we're doing currently. Our conference isn't until November, so we have a little bit more time. We work with a member planning committee, and clearly the first and most important trend and item that they want to hear about is people and talent. So many issues: finding people, keeping them motivated, keeping them from burning out, figuring out, are you returning to the office or not? It was going to be a Labor Day return. Now, you know, I think a lot of people have bumped to next year. And then figuring out compliance with all the existing rules and communities relating to masks, and whether your staff will be vaccinated, all of these different things to think about. So definitely bubble to the top as the #1 issue. Second was, and this, you know, Valerie touched a lot on this, so the resident experience, the self-guided tours, the virtual tours were all sort of, you know, in their infancy in 2019. Some folks had the virtual stuff in place and dusted it off, figured out who's got this virtual tour files. Let's get them out there. Self-guided tours definitely rolled out. Working from home, there's a couple of pieces to this, and Valerie touched on a lot of them. It's going to impact design, absolutely. Questioning how it's obviously going to impact broadband. That is going to be something people are going to want and have to have. But we're also looking at there's macro implications of that work from home, meaning, you know, there was a move to the suburb. We are starting to see a move back to the urban areas. So that's one between urban and suburban. But then for those folks who, you know, said no one has to return to the office, there's 2nd tier and 3rd tier cities that people could potentially move to. So the market analysts are tracking all of that, and we'll know soon enough sort of how many people are going to be forced to come back to the office, or how many of these digital nomads can continue to move around the country. So lots of interesting things going on there. And that gets to flexible leasing too. You know, potentially, if you don't have to be in an office, would you want to live 6 months here for the good weather, and then 6 months here for sort of follow the weather around the country? Or, you know, it sounds like a dream, but some people are able to do it, I think. So, you know, under this, we're also going to cover, there's a lot of innovations in resident finance. There's new models for security deposits, for renters insurance. There's rewards programs coming into the market where you pay your rent on time, you get a little bit of a reward that goes into an account, which you can use to pay rent down the road if you happen to be short any month. So lots of interesting things going on. We're going to sort of figure out how real a lot of that is. And then sort of how resident preferences have changed. Sort of, is there going to be what's going to be the interest in those physical amenities, which used to be almost our complete focus. And of course, packages, huge topic that we kind of groan every time we bring it up, because it just never seems to. There doesn't seem to be the one solution. Package lockers definitely are one of them, but even the package lockers are getting overwhelmed in this current environment where more people are working from home and getting packages and food and tires and mattresses and all types of things delivered to the apartments. Their third topic was business intelligence. So there's a lot of sort of what we call data obesity, in terms of there's a lot of data, but there's not a lot of insights into the data. Folks are having a hard time getting it standardized and getting it consistent and getting it integrated with all of their systems. So a huge topic. And then sort of change management surrounding that. How do you get your folks to put the data in the formats that is needed, upload it, and get it all to work, and sort of accept and agree on metrics and KPIs. So building technology, another huge topic for the conference. And this, we're looking here, of course, at modernizing sort of broadband in a lot of those existing communities. And Valerie's absolutely right. There's a complete shortage. We have not hit, our estimates are that we need 300,000 units per year. We haven't hit that mark. I think we've hit it only a couple of times over the last few decades. So definitely not enough. And I can verify this just from every time an apartment development comes into our community, and the forum just blows up with this constant NIMBY stop it from coming in. So it's very difficult to really build the amount of housing that we need. And that is contributing to an affordability problem. So with regard to building technology, we're looking at broadband, smart home technology, a lot of interest in the security issues surrounding that, a lot of data coming out of that and what to do with that. Sort of multiple products and systems, and sort of how do you take a comprehensive approach? We've started with the thermostat, and then we moved to the locks, and then we moved to we have the video at the front. So how do you really get the whole system to work together? And then thinking broader about not just the unit, but thinking about intelligent buildings and sort of comprehensive building management systems. Sort of how do you manage all of that data? A lot of energy efficiency potential through this new technology, leak detection, sort of backup power supplies are being discussed after what occurred down in Texas. And then a lot of concern about sort of resiliency and how do you get that power back up and running, and how do you avoid flooding, and how do you get folks back in there after different climate related events. So next is workflow efficiencies, and this was already beginning prior to the pandemic, but sort of has sped up. And we're referring here to sort of the new leasing office and the virtual tours that we mentioned earlier, but moving to self-service options, really self-service package lockers, self-service tours, and there are some companies that have created communities without any humans sort of in there, completely run sort of remotely. And that's a test run. So a lot of feedback we received here though too is that there's getting the right balance between the humans and the technologies, and getting the humans and the technologies to work together in the right way. Certain people want to talk to a person, other people don't want to talk to a person. So it really takes a lot of sort of emotional intelligence on the part of the community managers to figure out sort of, okay, these folks are fine with the complete self-service. These people want to talk to me, and figuring out how to deploy the right tools in the right places. So I think a lot of our members are trying to figure that out. How do you not create a system that's all tech and self-serve, but maybe it's frustrating for some folks and doesn't, we all know from like the voicemail where you just get stuck trying to get an answer when it's much easier to just hit 0 and talk to somebody. So trying to figure that out and get it right. Looking at robotic process automation and AI and all the roles that will play, and then getting it all to seamlessly integrate. I've heard a lot of folks talking about, instead of viewing AI as a tool, in a lot of cases viewing that as another staff member. So that's just whatever the name is, that's the new staff person, and they have limitations and strengths just like the humans. And that they can do this, but maybe they're not right for this task, and sort of deploying it in the right way. And then finally, and Valerie hit on this one as well, it's risk management, and this is just across the board, with the ransomware attacks, definitely cybersecurity. In a lot of cases, your biggest risk are your own people, never mind the Russians or the Chinese. It's actually Joe down the hall who's left his laptop at the airport or whatever, or clicked on that phishing link. So, really important with the staff training. We're getting a lot of feedback from our members about increased insurance costs, and that's related to, both the physical and the climate risk, but also some new issues relating to liability and rates going up, and the way they're looking at crime in certain communities and other sort of liability risks like barbecue grills on balconies and that type of thing. So we're conducting an insurance survey, and we should have information on that. And then every time we have a downturn, we also see an increase in fraud, and we're seeing that a significant amount of that people not, claiming to be someone they're not, then disappearing, not paying the rent. So, and then resident screening issues surrounding that. So those are the 6. I don't want to take too much time because I know we want to have some time for Q&A, but that is what I've got. I've got more on some survey data, which I'll be talking about in Houston. If we have time today, I can run through that. But I think for now, I will stop sharing and turn it over to Brian.
Yeah, Brian, go ahead. You have the floor. Thanks, Rick, for some great insights.
Yeah, great. I want to thank Drew for this opportunity for all of us to speak about broadband communities. As Valerie said, I've been attending also for 100 years. This is an event that blends the service providers and the property owners, and a lot of great dialogue happens in these meetings, and a lot of great ideas come from these meetings. So if you are either a service provider or a MDU property owner or a vendor that is looking at getting into the multifamily arena, this is the greatest event of the year to do that, to learn, to listen, to talk to other companies like my company that I work for, Single Digits, which is a managed Wi-Fi provider in the multifamily arena, to really hear ideas from others in the marketplace. One of the things that I do want to quickly mention is that there's a lot of macro trends in multifamily, but when we look at different markets and we look at some of the competition, whether it's Comcast and other fiber overbuilders or tier 2 or tier 3 markets, the trends are all happening in different time frames and different intensities, depending on geographies, depending on the age of the building, depending on the resident demographic, and depending on the needs of the investor or the property owner and how they're thinking about technology. So all of that certainly plays a role. In the last decade, we've seen a lot of change around the thought process in terms of cable companies and internet companies providing services in multifamily communities. About a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago, in the mid 2000s, we saw most property owners want to bring choice. They were stuck in exclusive agreements with Comcast, Time Warner at the time, Charter, et cetera. And they were interested in bringing alternatives so that when residents moved in, they didn't have to go with one provider. They had 2 or 3 choices. And so most owners were doing deals with revenue share or door fees or other incentives. And that was sort of the environment we lived in for many years. About 4 or 5 years ago, we started to see the seeds planted and things begin to change. And it wasn't because property owners decided they wanted bulk managed Wi-Fi. It was because they wanted what bulk managed Wi-Fi or what bulk internet could do for them. In particular, there was many, both Valerie and Rich have talked about this, many changes in amenities in communities. Residents were changing, ideas around smart home, around digital door locks, and all these other great property management tools. The challenge is, as many of the consultants in the industry have said, you can offer all these things, but if you are offering choice, none of this will work well. You have no control. And so properties came back and said, if I want to have these features in my community, how do I think about building a network, a platform, and infrastructure that can support where my residents are going today? And that's where managed Wi-Fi came into the picture. So we've seen an explosion of interest in bulk managed Wi-Fi. I would argue that it is not driven by the pandemic. I think the pandemic only accelerated what was already in an acceleration mode, and that this is something that's been going on for 4 or 5 years. We certainly, in new construction, almost 100% of new construction communities are thinking very closely about infrastructure and looking at bulk managed Wi-Fi, and suddenly resident choice means very different things. It's not that property owners want to control where residents go. The reality is the managed Wi-Fi network brings choice so that I can pick and choose as a resident any streaming service, any technology, any media. I get to choose as the resident. All you're doing is giving me the platform to choose. So it's really been a transformational trend in the last 4 or 5 years. Additionally, we've seen, as a lot of investors, the MDU market certainly has greater demand than supply. The industry is sensitive around the eviction challenges that are coming over the next 6 months. It could have an impact on the stability of supply and demand. But I think that the owners are looking at both existing properties and new construction, and certainly in existing communities, and repositioning and elevating communities. I was on a property in a Sunbelt market recently that I would call a C+ community in an A- location. And the owner was investing capital to add the Amazon Package Center, sport courts, dog walking parks and areas, sitting areas outside, a new fitness center, all these great things. And they said, why am I doing all this if I can't bring an amenity, a technology canopy over my entire community so that my resident can enjoy all of these great outdoor work areas if I don't have the platform to provide bulk internet for them. So we've seen that thought process, technology and infrastructure, not just on new construction, but on existing communities as well. I think that one of the areas of great opportunity with residents today is that when they move in is always a stressful time. Services like bulk managed Wi-Fi allow for mom, if she's signing the lease, or if mom and dad are moving furniture in, the kids are actually able to get online immediately, game, watch videos, maybe do homework while mom and dad are setting up the apartment. And that's something that does not require setting up a service call, a truck roll 2 or 3 days later. Residents love that. But if you also think about living in an apartment community today, whether it's a high rise or a garden style community in Dallas or Houston or Atlanta, a resident can leave her apartment, take her iPad, be watching her favorite show on Netflix that she's streaming or binging, walk to the fitness center, get on an elliptical, still streaming that movie, get off the elliptical, go to the clubhouse, get a cup of coffee, still streaming that video, sit at the dog walk area or go to the swimming pool, and she's on a seamless network that allows for that kind of consumption of media. And that's what real estate owners are looking to do today to meet the demand of today's resident. It's not only happening with Class A properties, and I think we always talk about exciting trends that are occurring in Class A, but the greatest part of the multifamily market is that it's not only Class A, it's happening in Class B and C communities in large NFL towns and in tier 2 and 3 communities. And we're going to talk a lot about this at Broadband. It's happening in affordable communities today. We are involved in a new construction 500+ unit community for low-income housing, and HUD is involved. And HUD actually required the developer to include bulk managed Wi-Fi at no charge for all residents in the community. And that is fascinating, that they are trying to close the digital divide by requiring this service in a low-income multifamily community. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We also, at Broadband Communities this year, have a session, as Valerie mentioned, on senior living. The fastest growing part of multifamily is senior living today. Baby boomers are aging out of single-family homes, and they're looking for independent communities that might have opportunities to migrate toward assisted living or even memory care in the future. And these communities are exploding. Just as we saw student housing 10 or 15 years ago go through this transformation with on and off or near campus housing, we are seeing that same trend in multifamily today. And senior living is the fastest growing part of multifamily. Senior living residents are bringing their digital consumption habits into their senior living communities. Historically, senior living communities were also hands-off. They were all about choice. Mrs. Smith moves in, she can have Comcast or she can have AT&T. That's not happening anymore. Today, they're looking at bulk managed Wi-Fi as an amenity that matters for their customers, not only for residents or for seniors, but their families, for medical staff, and for on-site staff as well. So what's happening at Broadband Communities across all multifamily, whether it's senior housing or affordable housing, will certainly be discussed. As I've said in closing, I'll say again, Broadband Communities is the greatest location or the greatest intersection of the real estate owners and the technology providers in our space. And I think you'll get to hear a lot about these topics in different sessions, but certainly in the hallway, in meetings one-on-one with vendors and other technology providers. And Single Digits is very excited to be a part of Broadband again this year.
Great, thanks, Brian. Thanks for those kind words, and thanks for all the great perspective all three of you had. So I'm just gonna throw out a bunch of questions, but certainly the top one here is about managed Wi-Fi, something we're looking into a lot more. And I guess my question for all three of you is, like, when a property owner decides to adopt this, whether it's a new or an old property, I mean, what's on their checklist of things as a provider, or, that they're looking for from Brian, or, what are they looking for? I mean, in terms of these kinds of is instant on connectivity that you just talked about going, what's on their wish list, I guess. And I'll have all three of you.
I'll start and I'll pass the baton over.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges right now is, as somebody mentioned earlier, we're adding 300,000 new units a year to the multifamily business. That's less than 1%. This industry has something like 33 million homes passed, or units that are considered multifamily apartment homes. And so the 99% of existing communities, when they think about bulk managed Wi-Fi, the first question they have is, do I have the current infrastructure to support it? And in most cases, the answer is no. So you need a provider to bring in fiber, Cat 5e or Cat 6 to the apartment home. You need access points in every home. The real first question is, what is it going to look like to make this happen? How can I do it? Can I do it without investing in it? And the answer is most independent providers will do it, and most non-independents, the larger companies, will also do it without the property owner having to invest in it. So there are a lot of ways to look at this. As far as what multi-managed Wi-Fi can do for you, there are a lot of different reasons why property owners look at managed Wi-Fi. One is it's the #1 amenity today. You shut the water off for 6 hours, the clubhouse, the leasing staff doesn't hear a peep. Shut the internet off for 15 seconds, there's a line out the door. So this is the #1 amenity, but it connects all the great amenities around the community. And I think that's a key component. I'll pass it over to Valerie to talk about the back of the office, because there's also great property management components of managed Wi-Fi. And they're not only thinking about resident experience, they're thinking about property management functionality with managed Wi-Fi as well.
Yeah, that's what I was also thinking of next. Valerie, go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So I want to kind of look at things from a leasing perspective, because when the staff is trying to lease an apartment, they're trying to present things in the best possible light. And with a managed Wi-Fi, if you have like an always on internet service, like I've seen some companies that do it really well, they have a quote sheet and it's included as a line item that is being offered for those residents. So it's really great to have that capability to be able to show that it's always on when you move in. And one of the things that I found, so I used to be on the multifamily side, I used to negotiate telecommunications contracts, and I also used to ensure that the training was done to the staffs out on site. And one of the most difficult aspects of any type of program like that is the fact that we have about a 43% turnover rate in multifamily on-site teams. And when you have that happen, if you don't have a good marketing side of whoever your provider partner is to be able to ensure that the on-site teams are up to speed on how to promote the product, then that can be difficult. So it's important that there's some level of training as far as how to promote it from an on-site perspective. But then, there are all of the things that Rick will probably get into with regard to the being able to manage things from the office, as far as some of the things Brian alluded to with making sure like leak detections are happening. There are so many benefits that happen as a result of those systems with different appliances tied in and different leak detections. There's all sort of, we'll say, cost recovery programs that are available by not having everything where you have to figure it out by a resident calling you and saying, oh my God, I have a leak. So it turns into usually a bigger problem down the line when it could be a preventative maintenance issue. And so there are definitely some benefits to having those things in place as well.
I think that's the dream, to get to that intelligent building. I don't think we're close to being there, but hopefully someday where you could get that kind of management. And I just had to kind of chuckle at what Brian said about the low-income development, because as you know, NMHC is the federal advocacy group for the apartment industry. In July, the Biden administration put out an executive order looking at anti-competitive practices, and specifically mentioned exclusivity agreements as an anti-competitive practice. And then as HUD gets into the development and realizes, hey, this is a pretty good thing, it's just kind of ironic to see that, one side of the government, understanding the value of that sort of bulk, and the other, potentially calling it an anti-competitive practice. So anyway, it's going to be an interesting couple of months as we work through that.
Great.
Hey, Sean, before we jump.
Yeah, no, sure, go ahead.
Add one other thing that Valerie was commenting about bringing on managed Wi-Fi, having turnover in staff, obviously having turnover in residents every year as well. I think as MDU, as multifamily owners think about bringing these new technologies and looking at new providers for their community, whether they're going to provide managed Wi-Fi or not, the selection of the right company is not only about the technology, it's the infrastructure, it's the human infrastructure that matters as well. Right. A lot of providers are cramming single family solutions into multifamily environments, and that is a bad strategy. That is a recipe for disaster. I think the best companies are the ones that are focused on the property manager, that are focused on what happens in the leasing office and on site every day. This is not a set it and forget it technology. It doesn't run on its own, and there are humans that have to manage the resident interaction every day and support residents if something doesn't work, and take care of that. So it's definitely not a set it and forget it technology.
Sure. The name managed, I guess. I want to come back to something that Valerie talked about, broadband ratings, and we've been hearing more about this. And I've talked to like Rover and a couple other companies that are looking at this kind of, if you go to a property, I mean, do you have good broadband, and what's the experience that people have? How much is that becoming more of an issue for a multifamily developer when they build a property, or they're doing something existing? I mean, how are you seeing more of this, I guess, from all of you taking place? I mean, people getting more vociferous, I guess, about broadband here is not too good, and giving those ratings. So sorry, but Val, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I know Rick has some information that will probably be really interesting with regard to their resident surveys and what people are looking at with regard to service when they go onto a property. But what I will say is that with companies like Rover Score that are starting to come out on the forefront, that you're going to be judged based on your broadband's performance. And you already are through apartment ratings, through Yelp, through things like that. And there are some companies that do a really good job of managing their reviews. There are other companies that don't look at them and don't respond to them, or they just ignore them and hope they go away, which of course they never do. And it's usually only the really unhappy people that complain about things. So it's important, I think, for property management companies to encourage good reviews in different areas, but just know that there is a system that's coming that is going to be looking specifically at broadband. And I know we've got Scott Casey on a panel, I believe, at the Broadband Communities Summit, and he'll probably get into some of the reasons behind that and how that developed and what that can look like going forward. But I think definitely, it's going to start to be something that people are looking at more, especially given the past year.
Rick, if you had some perspective on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we're seeing that there are two players in that space right now, WiredScore and Rover. Just sort of, WiredScore's been around a while, it's just launching a multifamily. Interesting, to see how that plays out. Definitely, as Valerie said, if you look on the you can check in ratings and reviews, and if they are bad and they're not answered. I mean, our surveys all show answer your ratings and reviews, even if they're positive, say thank you. And people expect that. They really want to see and it's how they gauge like the responsiveness of it. So we're supportive of these certifications, and we hope that they do drive better broadband in the industry. And Valerie mentioned the stat that gets quoted a lot from resident preferences survey, 92%. It's the same on cell service as it is on broadband. 92% of the residents said they either wouldn't rent without it or are very interested in broadband and reliable cell reception. It's always at the top, and it's one where there's very little distinction among the age groups, just across the board. A little less interest in those 75 plus, but still in the high 80s. So definitely the main amenity, and I'm sure to continue to be even more important in the coming year.
Brian, how about you? Yeah.
The
yeah,
only,
I mean, I know you-
the only thing I would add is that if you look historically at cable companies and internet companies, the average scores from the providers are terrible. I mean, this industry has been 19th out of 19 categories forever, ranking below the post office and other businesses. It's just, it hasn't scored well. As we think about connectivity scores being measured, if they're measured through, I don't know a lot about how they measure the scoring yet. If it's done similar to a walkability score, and it's just if you're close to a coffee shop, you get a point. If you're close to this, you get a point. But I think there's a lot of subjectivity in measuring connectivity, and people often, even if they have a gigabit of speed to their apartment home, but use the wrong Wi-Fi device or have it on the wrong setting, their service will be poor, and they'll blame the provider and the property and be wrong on both accounts. So it is a perception rating, and we'll see how it's perceived and how it influences leasing over the next 2 or 3 years.
And just to piggyback on that really quickly, Rick raised a great point that these companies, Wired Score and Rover, I think I combined them earlier into Rover Score. That was me getting both of them out there, apparently. But Wired Score and Rover both are certification programs that provide a rating. And so these property management companies will have an ability to become a certified property. And so if you are not becoming certified, you could be at a competitive disadvantage. So just to clarify on that.
Right.
One of the things we like about the concept is that it starts to set a standard. And as Brian said, we all have to agree that those are the right metrics. But at least it starts to say, hey, this is how the process is going to go. And the industry can say, hey, that's not quite right, or we're getting to a lot of the issues that he was referring to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in all of our conversations, I mean, broadband is, do you have broadband at this property, whether it's single family or wherever, and even in rural markets, the house won't sell if there's no broadband there, if it's not good. So, we see that everywhere. In the last few minutes, I want to jump on the cybersecurity element. That's certainly going to be a big issue. I mean, certainly as we get these platforms in place, especially for managed Wi-Fi and so many different people coming on to a system. I mean, if any of you want to weigh in on the cyber risks, not just T-Mobile, but, of course, everyone else that, in these buildings where they're trying to offer service to everybody, weigh in on that. So weigh in first, Brian? Or...
I can start with that, actually. So one thing that Rick mentioned was insurance, and something that I didn't know until I was working with Julianne is the fact that there is a separate cyber insurance policy. And so a lot of times, even if you're working with a provider, and let's say that something happens to that provider, what is your liability per your cyber insurance? And so if the provider who you've contracted with to provide this service at your building, they have something happen that causes this lapse in security and possible risk, and maybe there are issues with that, what is your liability and responsibility as a building owner? So the cyber insurance piece of it was very interesting to me because I didn't realize, everything that should be looked into regarding that. Also, one of the things that I was really thinking about is from when I worked out on site, back in the day, I remember getting notifications like, oh, you need to update this. And you have people on site who will be like, oh yeah, I'll do that later. Or that's so-and-so's responsibility, thinking that wasn't their responsibility. So then does it get done? That's the big risk, is you're relying on all of these other people to do these things that need to happen. So I would look at the property management company and say, do we have a plan in place to double check that all of these things are being done? So there needs to be some sort of checklist process where we're ensuring that all of these things to mitigate risk are happening, and also making sure that the staff is trained on who needs to be doing what and when.
Brian or Rick?
I would just quickly add that most really sophisticated managed Wi-Fi providers that are doing managed Wi-Fi today have very secure networks. I wouldn't refer to them as cybersecurity, but just the networks themselves are designed with incredible redundancy and security, and they're very safe. The one thing that we can't protect against is that you don't know what your users will do, and sometimes they'll do things that might challenge that. But the bigger organizations, the bigger independent companies today in our market are backed by institutional investors and have really invested heavily in building very strong security platforms around their networks, and they are incredibly sophisticated today.
Great. Rick, any perspective on that from you?
No, just as I recently heard, sort of ironically, that some of the bad guys are targeting firms with the cybersecurity insurance because the payout comes from the insurance company and not the company. So like you can't win.
Can't win for time.
Yeah, right. We only have a few more minutes, so I'm just going to turn to ask all of you for just some final thoughts, and I'm going to hand it back to Drew for his wrap. But Brian, you want to start with some final thoughts about the summit and everything? Yeah.
My last thought is that for the first time, I think we can see technology is finding areas of innovation and opportunity in multifamily before single family. Many of the innovations that we're seeing are not being repositioned from single family for multifamily. They're being developed for multifamily. And I've never seen such innovation occurring. And I think a lot of that will be on display at Broadband Communities, and we're very excited to be, Single Digits is very excited to be part of that later in September.
Yeah, we're glad to have you there. And Valerie, yeah, to kick it to you.
Yes, I would just like to say that I think this past year has showcased the need for broadband to be robust and dependable. And multifamily has truly seen how that makes a difference and where there have been hiccups or challenges along the way. So for any companies that are really wanting to plan for the future, this is a great place to start, to be the arsenal in your tool belt to figure out how you need to plan for the future and going ahead, and what are the innovations that you want to invest in for your buildings, and how can you make your system more robust.
Right. And Rick, finally to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is really an exciting time, and everyone's trying to figure out, we're in a new world. It's like, how do we adapt to this new world? They've got a million questions, and there's really no better place to get answers than, I hate to say it, but in-person events. The virtual just doesn't get you the kind of, all the types of conversations that you can have in person. We held our annual meeting, and I had so many aside conversations there, and I realized, wow, there is a big difference between a virtual and an in-person. It's like someone, hey, I wanted to make sure I told you this, and they tell you that, and they wouldn't pick up the phone and do a Zoom call to tell you that. But so I just hope we're all back to a place where we can see each other in person soon, and I look forward to seeing everyone in Houston.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's the little in-person meetings, I guess, that people have. So Drew, back to you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a very illuminating discussion. I've enjoyed listening and enjoyed being able to sit back and watch one of these. 3 quick points in closing. The first is really building off something Brian said, which is I am now a multifamily housing customer because my daughter has gone off to college and she is in a multifamily housing unit. And as I was setting her up a week ago, 10 days ago, 12 days ago, I recognized one of these features you mentioned, like I could do my Netflix and just link it to the common TV screen. And that was a nice feature that was set up in this multifamily housing complex for college students. So I guess I want to say those things do make a difference, right? I mean, just to have those kinds of amenities. So I've certainly heard a discussion of that, and it's great to kind of hear that and digest this. And also this point about the tension that Rick made between the one part of the Biden administration, recognizing some positives to the bulk buy and others kind of raising concerns. And I certainly have concerns. I look forward to talking with all of you at Broadband Communities. And in light of that, I want to say, remember that for Broadband Breakfast Club members, you go to this link, you get special discounts for events, including the Broadband Communities Summit. So you can get a discounted rate if you join the Broadband Breakfast Club to attend. I will be there at Broadband Communities. I look forward to seeing all of you. We're very excited, not just for the Digital Infrastructure Investment mini conference that Broadband Breakfast will be hosting from 12 to 5 Central Time on Monday, but for all of the sessions throughout the week. And like Valerie, I've been going to this, and Brian, I've been going to this conference for 100 years, actually just 14. But anyway, that's close enough. And it's going to be great to be there in person.
Nice.
Closing thought. We here at Broadband Breakfast are here every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. At Broadband Breakfast, our motto is better broadband, better lives. We cover the infrastructure and the applications and uses and their impact on technology companies, the social media issues, the Section 230 questions, the antitrust questions that are all very much part of our conversation about the use of broadband and the internet in technology today. Next week for our session, Broadband Breakfast Live Online, we'll be talking about the Biden administration's cybersecurity executive order. So more topics of importance. And of course, that was touched on quite a bit in this discussion here. We look forward to welcoming you, those of you who are in Washington, to our in-person Broadband Breakfast Live Online event, relaunching on September 8th. It will be Broadband Breakfast for lunch. So register to attend, come to Clyde's of Gallery Place for 11:30 lunch, and then we start the program at 12 noon Eastern Time, so that those who are not in Washington won't be able to have lunch, but they will be able to enjoy the show. And so we look forward to welcoming you. Come back here every Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern Time. And thank you on behalf of our panelists, Brian Rader, Rick Howery, and Valerie Sargent, as well as our moderator, Sean Buckley. I'm Drew Clark for Broadband Breakfast. I'll see you next Wednesday at 12 noon. Take care.
Thanks, Sean.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Drew.